those who've enjoyed massive profits, those who have been able to make a massive profit off the pandemic, if you profited off this difficult time, then yeah, you should contribute more. We'll find out what the right balance is, but those who've profited off of this difficult time should have to contribute. It shouldn't be those who've lost. It shouldn't be the small businesses that are afraid of shutting down. They shouldn't have to bear the burden.
Earlier this week, Jagmeet Singh and the NDP made an absolutely common sense pitch in Parliament. The rich and wealthy and well-connected have gotten away with their millions and their billions while working class Canadians suffer, and that if we want to get out of this pandemic and build a better society once we're out of it, we have to tax the rich, especially on all wealth above $20 million and on excess profits made during this crisis while regular people and small businesses are languishing at best. And while this policy was supported by 76% of Canadians, including a majority of people from all parties, every party but the Greens and the NDP voted against it. The Liberals under Trudeau and the Conservatives under O'Toole and the Bloc under Blanchette know what their voters want, and they spat in their faces anyway. If there's ever a moment where people need to realize that unless you start voting differently, you're going to continue to elect governments that disregard your will, nothing's going to change in Canada. Thanks to Lance from the Serfs for encouraging me to do this. Check me out on my YouTube channel, guys. Have a good one.
Anyone who had a wealth of over $20 million was going to see a 1% tax increase. So if you had more than $20 million in assets, that only applies to people with $20 million in assets, you get 1% increase in taxes, because the theory, and it's laid out to be true, is that the richest Canadians during this pandemic have actually become vastly more wealthy, while the majority of Canadians can't live. So the idea was simple, proposed by Mr. Jagmeet Singh in the middle. He was going to basically say, hey, if you have more than $20 million worth of assets, you're probably doing okay, and we're going to increase it by 1%. And we're going to use that money, all the money we get from that taxing, to pay for the poorest Canadians for their lives. So that was what was proposed. It was shut down. The only parties who voted for it were the NDP and the Greens. The Conservatives, the Liberals, and the Bloc all said no. This was a dramatic overreach. 76% of Canadians supported this. 76%. Because, of course, it doesn't apply to the vast majority of them. The near majority strongly supported it. More impressively, however, is how support is universal across all party lines. Unsurprisingly, 91% of NDP voters supported it, but so did 70% of Conservatives. In fact, only 7% of Conservative voters actively opposed it. Every party given at least two-thirds majority to support the idea of taxing the wealth, but not a single MP from Canada's three biggest caucuses stood with the NDP in the motion. So they're not following their constituents. They're not following the will of the voters. They're simply following their wealthy donors and their rich sycophants and their rich friends. That's what happened. So I would say that these parties don't really speak for us if they're not representing us. And if they're not representing their own constituents, then you got a genuine problem. So I did a thing, everybody. So let's push the button. Curious, there was a recent vote that just took place in Parliament that I wanted to ask you some questions about. It was, I think, proposed by the NDP, and it was to tax Canadians who made more than $20 million a year.
Okay, I'm not sure what I can help you with, but I can try.
Oh, I was curious why he voted against it.
I cannot talk on that issue because I'm not sure what his personal convictions are on that. If you want to send an email to ed.fast@parl.gc.ca, and I'll say that again if you need it, I can forward that to him.
Because I'm personally one of the Canadians who that would affect. My net worth is about $35 million, and I'm actually quite happy that he did, because it's going to keep things good for me. So I was curious if there's a way to thank him.
Yeah, I'd say the best way would be to send an email, and then I can send that directly to him.
Does he accept gifts?
why don't you write it in the email what you'd like to do, and then he can respond, and that would help me stay outside of like saying what he wants or doesn't want, because I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, I have a large selection of jewels. I could definitely send jewels. Does he like jewels?
I'm not sure of his personal preferences. I would recommend sending an email of thanks and then potentially putting that inside, being like, hey, would you mind if I sent something to your office? And then he can send a response.
Well, I wouldn't want to embarrass myself. So, I mean, if you could help me, like, let me know if he prefers sapphires or something of that nature, I could put together his favorite collection.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I don't think he's very he's interested in anything like that. I feel like an email would be the best way to say thank you. He's
not interested in sapphires specifically?
I don't think he's not interested in anything, a gift of jewels of any kind.
I could find other things. I've got a lot of resources.
I appreciate you wanting to say thanks. I really think an email is the best way to say thanks, and I can send that right to him.
What about shoelaces? I used to own a shoelace factory. We've got quite a large assortment. I could even
send some shoelaces to the office, and I feel like that would be a fun gift. But I don't know anything about his personal preferences on those things.
Does a particular color matter of the shoelace, or maybe you could tell me which shoes you prefer? We do have a variety.
I'm not sure. I have no indication of what kind of shoes he wears. He wears dress shoes, and that's what I see him in.
I'm on the website now. There's not like a shoe policy page. It's not in the constituency section.
No. You know what?
And I just had a couple questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I happen to be one of the wealthier Canadians that was affected by the vote that just took place. I believe the vote in Parliament was to tax Canadians over $20 million or so. My net worth being about 37, so it was directly impacting me. So I was actually very thankful that the Liberal Party shut it down. So I was wondering if I could send some gifts your way.
Unfortunately, gifts would have to be an in-kind donation. And they cannot exceed $1,625 in value, and they cannot be corporate donations.
What about jewels?
No, we would not be able to legally accept those.
Like sapphires?
Unfortunately, no, sir. We would not be able to get those.
What if the sum total of the value of the sapphires that I had mined was under the $1,600 allotted limit?
I believe natural. I don't believe we can accept that, but I'd have to double check with our finance and compliance teams.
If that one wasn't applicable, there's other ones I could use. We also have rubies, for example.
Again, sir, that would still fall under the same as the sapphires then.
Right. What about just raw resources? Like if I had bitumen, for example, just large quantities of that.
I don't believe we could accept those either, sir.
Again, if the sum total of the bitumen was under the $1,600 allotted amount that was legally, like I wouldn't want to get you in trouble. I do have excess of both sapphires and bitumen right now.
Even if we could accept the bitumen, the issue would be that we likely wouldn't, because we'd have no way of turning that into funds for the party.
Well, you couldn't utilize the oil factories or refining factories we already use?
No, sir, that we wouldn't be able to use that. As a party, for starters, we'd have to arrange a contract, and the amount of bitumen we'd receive for under that much would not result in much of a return on investment for the party in general. So I don't believe we'd be willing to accept bitumen.
But we're talking about $1,600 with the bitumen. Like it seems almost comical to me that someone wouldn't be able to turn that into something profitable for the Liberal Party of Canada. Oh, they hung up. Well, here's looking to you, Mr. Trudeau. Thank you, by the way. Thank you. Thanks on the behalf of all obscenely wealthy Canadians. We thank you. You've done the Lord's work.
Hey, we want to mutual aid you to get some eyeballs on your work. So if you have a leftist YouTube channel or Twitch stream or something you want us to advertise, just send us a 20 to 30 second ad using the forums at weareserfs.com. We'll do our best to help you out. And please submit once per channel.
To our gods, I'm Rav, Xander Coordinates. We shall build temples in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we live to do your bidding. To our lords, Jeffrey Lamb, Trevor R., Stephen, Nine Tails Cosmic Fox, Aunt Josephine, Poppy Nelson, Ryan Lubin, Jimothy K. Meeble Beeps Jr., we bow meekly for your pleasure. And to our Knights of the Round Table, Josh Mickelson, Dylan Veit, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, Todd Lajeunesse, Political Puppy, Ali Menthal, Jimmy Big Nuts, Andreas Chitoro, Good Poon Hates Cops, That's Solid Poon Then, Dr. Zayas, Joppy, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Jack Darko, Thomas Barrington, J. Fraser Cartwright, Goofalankius, Melissa Murphy, Nicholas Marks, Alexander Thaler, Ramon Acosta, and Ali Retta Jaffer. We salute you. Love you all. Peace.